Leighton, that was Mr. Smith's name is Leighton, and so then Ralph is Ralph Mays Smith. That was his mother's maiden name. Last name was Mays. And, oh no, it was Crawford. I don't know how that other Mays got in there. But each of them came from large family backgrounds. When the people like Douglas and Ralph were younger, whenever Mr. Smith would get a new vehicle or a drivable vehicle, they'd all go back to Pennsylvania, where they were from. And so Smitty has some good, if he can remember anything anymore, I don't know. But it's funny how a person changes by what they can remember.
Oh my gosh.
And he always sort of gets out of temper with me. He said, oh, you remember all those details. Well, I remember names and who goes with what and stuff like that. To me, that's very impressive when you can meet somebody and say, oh, hi, so-and-so, and call them by the proper name.
Right.
My uncle Wally, who was the bachelor guy that lived at home, was one of the first ones to get a pickup truck. And I mean, he called it Henry because of Henry Ford. And it was a Ford thing. And so it was a one-seated in the front and then a big box in the back that was just for stuff, not upholstered or anything. So we'd get a wooden bench and sit back there, and then we'd say, drive under the Belle Isle Bridge, and then it says, of course, do not honk horns, honk the horn, you know. So then we had a successful trip when we got to blow the horn under the Belle Isle Bridge.
Yeah.
Well, of course, there was only 2 living brothers in the thing, and the rest were all girls.
Right.
My Aunt Helen, my Aunt Lillian, Aunt Rit, and Nana, and stuff like that. I think Aunt Rit's name was Rita Marie, and Helen was Helen, and Nana's name was really Margaret Patricia. So she didn't like Maggie, so she said, I'll go by Patty.
Yeah.
So then my dad was the one that decided I should be named after my mother.
Right.
And she said, well, not Margaret. So I missed the Maggie business. Roy was the oldest, Earl the next, my dad the youngest. And Royal George had one woman that he married, Aunt Ruth, and the only reason I can remember her was my dad made such caustic remarks about her. He called her the Scarecrow and stuff, and I said she was skinny as you could imagine, a little beanpole for a leg, like, or something like that, tall and too thin to be called trim or slim. She was skinny and had bone sticks out all over. So my dad, of course, not being too respectful of it, would say, oh, is the Scarecrow going to be there? Or something like that. And so my mother would say, you keep your mouth shut. We had very interesting neighbors. Jim Hooks on the one side was a huge, portly man that could barely make it up the stairs, and he lived on the 2nd floor of this thing. So once he got up, he was up there. I mean, the place could have burned down around him and stuff, so I don't know how his laundry was taken care of, or I was just a kid, so I never concerned myself with all that, except that he was a big drunkard. And so Aunt Rick would say, oh, we can't watch that tonight. And Raj and I would say, oh, yes, we can. And we watched this big old lumbering drunk come waddling home. They all say, well, what is Turner's? And I'd say, like a combination, YM and YWCA all in one package. Plus they served dinner and stuff, so that was quite a blessing. And then we went for the athletic things, and they had Mr. and Mrs. Pletz, P-L-E-T-Z, and her name was Teresa, and his was Ivan. And so then he taught the men and boys, and she did the women, and did a dang good job of it for all the faculties that were available in those days. I used to feel privileged that I got to have a teacher that had taught ballet and tap and calisthenics and stuff like that. And I still think to this day that my mobility is partly due to that continuous movement that we had as youngsters. And I loved the work. I just absolutely ate it up. And so if we'd have had a practice for 3 hours, okay, let's do it, you know, and I enjoyed it and stuff like that. So then we gave recitals on Mother's Day and all these other so-called holidays, and the moms and dads had to provide the costumes. Teresa Pletz would get the pattern and buy the material and cut out the thing and then give it to the parents to sew it and stuff like that. So it was sort of a co-op arrangement. My mother and dad were both ballroom dance instructors. And my dad used to, and in that day and era, there were not that many men that went in for ballroom dancing. So my mother felt, I better grab this guy while he's available and stuff. And so they both would practice at home. We had a phonograph and records, and that little square that was the front hall or the vestibule or something in the Scripps house was no furniture in it at the time, and they would put on records and then practice their dancing. And then on Friday night we would all meet down at Turner's and go for a swim and have dinner and go up to the dining room where they had live musicians and played current stuff. And so then my mom and dad would dance and everybody would clap. Stationary steam engineer, and he would regulate the temperatures of the building, and whether it needed coal or air conditioning was a new thing on the thing, because heretofore had fans been the total equipment for, and he worked for a man called J.B. Riley. And I was very impressed with this man because he lived in the Alden Park Manor. And I said, oh, he must be wealthy, because it was right on the Detroit River. And I had been fishing with my dad, and he'd say, oh, that's where all the rich folks live and get the Detroit River for their backyard. And I thought, wow, that must have been some job, you know. I can just remember this Mr. Riley, except he wore glasses that were down on his nose so far, and you know, I'd be peering over the glasses and stuff like that, and I'd think, is he inspecting or something and stuff. So it was, and he worked my dad to death as far as that goes. Of course, it was sort of warriors and stuff, and so if they got a defense contract, you worked around the clock. If it was necessity, no such thing as hiring more guys and stuff like that. So the unions had not come into existence, or if they had, it was usually with some curse words, like Walter Reuther would, that was a no-no and stuff like that, because my dad was very anti-union, and that's all I can remember about those things. Nana started working because she said, I want the kids to have an education above all else. So Raj and I got to go to college and stuff, because of Nana's grit and determination. I think each of us would have dropped out had it not been her insistence that we complete. Once I got to know what I was into, and I can thank my dad for that. He was a frustrated doctor type person, and he'd say, now this is for this or that's for that, and we had to follow rules and eat healthy and do other stuff. So anyhow, I grew up with that mentality of staying well or making it well, and that's what I enjoyed doing, the diagnostic lab work. I loved the chemistry part. The hematology was sort of ho-hum because there was so much of it. Everybody had a CBC and urinalysis if they even walked through the door. So it was a common thing, but when you got to do some alkaline phosphatase or something out of the ordinary, why, that was more of a challenge, that I to get out the book and read the directions of what to do and how to do it, and filter and titrate and all that kind of stuff. It was right up my alley, and so I never mind working evenings or overtime or anything, because I liked what I was doing. And so I think I told the kids, if you can find a job that you enjoy, it won't be a job, it'll be a pleasure to go to work. And that's what it always was for me.
Do you remember Phil Lockhart?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was Roger's closest friend.
Yeah?
Yeah, and yeah, Phil Lockhart, and he married a girlfriend of mine, Joyce.
Joyce.
It was Joyce Williams.
Yeah.
And then she became Joyce Lockhart, of course, and stuff like that. And she was always I was always envious of her because she was such a brainy kid. She remembered everything, knew the chemical names and the signals for every item, and she could just do anything. And I thought, well, Joyce has got it all together. She'll be a success. And then I was kind of surprised when she and Phil got married, because Phil, to me at that time, his dad had been a U.S. rubber Reunion Royal employee, and I thought, he has to take the bus and the streetcar to work. He didn't have his own car, for heaven's sake, because my mom and dad would go up to Harson's Island, and Tajmu Park was the big attraction. Anyhow, we all enjoyed that, and I enjoyed going out in the farmers' fields and doing stuff that was farmer type work and stuff like that. But then the big treat was Tajmu Park and going on the rides and
I think I have a photo. I have a photo of you on the ferry going to Tajmu.
So I feel very, very lucky to have had the bringing up that I did and the opportunities that I had. And had I been a little smarter, I would have taken better advantage of them. But I enjoyed every bit of it. So.